Okay, I'm going to do a little correction, little work on these plasticene fellows, and you're welcome to be bored out of your minds watching, and I might discuss some things about modeling, carving that I've experienced. So first of all, you're probably wondering why my head seemed to be male mostly. Is this misogyny, perhaps? Is it hate? Am I unable to bear the form of the female? Well, you could report me to YouTube's thought control department and have an AI bot monitor my videos, if you like. Don't really care. You get more views that way, actually. I'm all about the views, as you know. But no, I actually had more female heads before, but I found that I would get these females to sit for me, and they couldn't sit still. They're always on their phones and doing their makeup and stuff. And so I would have to decapitate them. And I would keep their heads in a freezer. And I'd obviously use them for reference. And they're much better in terms of they could sit for longer and whatnot, but I found some problems with that because basically you end up becoming a serial killer, and that's not what you set out to be. You're just trying to get reference that sits still and doesn't. Also, there's a lot of, to be honest, some of these creatures are a little bit we didn't agree on some things politically and whatever. You end up becoming a serial killer. You set out to become an artist, and you're a serial killer now, and it's very stressful. Covering your tracks, and had to get like 2 fridges. I had a secret fridge behind the big fridge, and then my big fridge broke, so then I had to use the fridge with the heads in it for food for a while. That was awkward. Had some people over for dinner, and someone wanted to get something from the fridge, like making coffee. They wanted the milk. Had to run and sort of stop them before they found the heads. It just all became really stressful, and around that time I found this really good skull that was a resin copy, and it was just happened to be a male, so I started using that just to lay low for a while. So that's pretty much why I've been doing mainly males, because of my skull. Yep. So don't jump to conclusions and think it's all about hate. It isn't always about hate. Now, I was having a look at my old friend Viet Stos the other day, so I was thinking I should do get back and do some more sculpting. Well, he's got all his wood carving, and maybe I'll talk a little bit about that as well. So why aren't I doing carving here, but I'm using plasticene or oil-based clay? Because carving fascinated me, the wood sculpting, and I really like the look of it, and I still do, and I was looking at a lot of stuff from the Alps area, a lot of those people, and then European Baroque sculpting and some Renaissance stuff when wood was still popular. But when you go to do it yourself, you run into a lot of problems that you don't foresee necessarily. So getting access to wood, you need a lot of wood. For any given size, you need a lot more wood than you think. So a head this size, you find that well, you can do masks, you can just do the face and so on, practice that way, which I did for a while. But if you want to do the back of the head, the head is very long. It's very it's very deep. That's one mistake people often make when they're learning drawing or sculpting and so on, is that the head really is the skull really has some depth to it, and you need a lot of wood to cover a full skull. At full size, you need just a huge log of wood, and even half size, you need so this is around half size. I think it's a little under. You need a very thick piece of wood, and it can't be heartwood. So the original log's got to be huge, really. I mean, you can stick these things together, but as well, veneer it. But when you see these people doing the wood carving, you don't realise at first how big the wood is that they're actually using. And it's the same with stone carving. But so getting access to that to practice on is not so easy, and you end up working quite small, and that's okay. I mean, it's good to work. You're gonna do small things too, but and there's working small has advantages as well. But it was very awkward actually to secure the wood so that you can smack it around with the chisels and hammer. I mean, that was one thing that was actually very difficult. It still is, because you've got to secure it in. They screw it to these desks, and have various clamps. So there's various ways of doing it, but it seems in the past they basically screwed a lot of these things into a workbench, and it just gets there's a lot of issues that you deal with, and the issues with the chisels and gouges. I had to learn a lot about that. You don't realise all the different gouges. At first I didn't realise you needed the flat chisels actually catch the grain and rip it from certain angles. So there's all these issues with the grain, and you're going to need to have to do sort of a flat surface. You basically, if it's concave, or it's flat. It's not, unless it's convex. You need to have these flat gouges that still have a bit of a curve on them, so that the edges don't catch. There's all these types of things you find out about, and you don't need as many gouges as some people have, but it's not like stone carving where they just seem to have really a small collection of them. You can get away with less than they recommend, but yeah, you can have a minimalist one, but yeah, there's a lot of issues like that. Sharpening gouges, chisels. I cut myself a lot because I wasn't wearing gloves for a while, and if you make them really sharp, you just touch them. I guess I proved I got good at sharpening. But if you leave, you move the chisel and your hand brushes it, the other hand brushes the edge, and you just slice your finger, or it's on the desk, and you feel that horrible sensation of touching the blade, and because it was you reached without looking, and I just nicked myself a lot. It got really annoying because I play some musical instruments as well, so it's not at the same time, but that would be even more reckless, I'd say. But you're cutting your fingers up all the time. So I started wearing gloves. That helped. Yeah, I still want to get back into it, but it's just also it's not as easy to do it inside. I was doing it and having to clean up all the chips and stuff, but yeah, chiseling, you end up having to chisel a lot of waste away, or gouge a lot of waste away, and it's just it's quite physical as well. It's so in hot weather it's not the most pleasant thing to do, and it's hot here like half the year. So yeah, there's a few issues with it that I found, and like I said, I did quite a lot. Carving is it's also different. Carving is like a different sequence to modeling, and because you're retracting, obviously, but it's a completely different sequence. So I started trying to practice carving with plasticene or with wax. So I would make a little block, basically a little flat thing, and work out a carving sequence. Because these things are hard to find out about now, and yeah, it's all very different. Carving back, particularly the eyes, you're carving back, and you've got to leave enough. You can't gouge too deep. Like here, I've got a deep gouge. If you want to put the eye in, you can't do what I'm doing here. So you've always got to leave a bit, and it's very difficult. Carving's super hard. Sculpting super hard compared to modeling. But in the end, you get a finished piece that you don't have to do anything to in terms of fire it or make molds and cast it. Now a lot of people back then I wasn't making models out of clay or wax and then trying to work from that, which didn't help. I was just doing it straight because I was just practicing, but that doesn't help either. When you're learning, trying to carve direct like that. So anyway, I didn't have enough knowledge of anatomy stuff or whatever, But it's not even just that. It's like the sequence. You've got to get the sequence right, and it's very tough to find out how they used to do this. And I watched some things from those people in Austria and whatever, but I didn't. They have a bit of material about it, but I don't know. They do courses, and I'm not going to fly to Austria and do their bed and breakfast carving course for $1 million. So yeah, I still have plan on doing some. I like the idea of the purity of just getting a piece of wood and gouges and chisels and creating sculptures with it. I mean, it's incredible that you can do that. Or I can't do it, but that it can be done. And the people have done amazing sculptures like that. I'm not saying modeling's bad, but because modelling really is superior in terms of getting exactly what you want, because you can correct. But you still get an effect with the carving that you get the facets, and you get a kind of effect, a crispness with the carving that it looks great. The other problem I had was wood, and that is so it all looks great. You see them carving, and you think that wood looks really nice that they're using. I'll just get some of that, and you find out that it's not pine. It's not cheap pine at the hardware store, which I practice on. Now there is some kind of pine they're using in the Alps that's a bit different and a bit better, I think, than the pine radiata, Pinus radiata. But you find out they're using lime wood, and I'm like, what is lime wood? I'll just get some lime wood. Oh, lime wood. I mean, they don't just use lime wood, because the smaller sculptures they're using are harder woods. But you find out that lime wood is not cheap, and it's considered the best carving wood by a lot of these people, traditional carving wood, but it's running out, and it's not as easy to get hold of now, I think. And it's just, it's not easy to get it, and it's not easy to get it in large supply. So suddenly when you're thinking, I'll make a half-size sculpture which is a meter high or something, well, the lime wood you need for that is massive, and it's probably going to cost you a lot of money. So practicing on this, and this becomes very impractical as well. And the heavier woods for smaller carving, they're also quite costly. I actually have a bit of that wood though. I inherited some wood because my father did some wood turning, so I do have quite a bit of wood, and I found some logs. From cut down trees and stuff, and gum, eucalyptus. I'm not sure. I think it's quite good wood, eucalyptus, gum trees, but it's hard wood. So, when it's hard, doing large sculpture is difficult. Well, this is semi-large. When it's hard, you have to do smaller stuff. Really, you don't have to, but it's even harder to get through the. I think we have an issue with this ear. I think this ears too. So yeah, basically, I gravitated more towards. I realised I needed to learn more anyway, and get my forms better. before I was wasting too much stuff carving, and do more study, and then as well it's just the wood, getting access to the wood, it's not easy, or it's very impractical. Whereas you can get access to clay very easily, well, definitely oil clay, and I mean other clay too, sort of. I made some of my own clay, but now I do have, but I have like pine and whatever, which I practice on. But you think, oh, what's the big deal? You just use pine, man. It's the same as wood. It's a tree, just a tree. And then you find out why they use lime wood, because when you start to use pine or these kinds of woods that nobody wants to carve with, they're full of knots. The wood's full of knots, which so you get a piece with a nice little buttery section, and you sharpen your chisel and you cut your fingers off a bit, and then you're going really well. Oh, this is great. Oh, these fools who keep buying lime wood. I've got pine from the hardware store. I've sold it, and then suddenly you hit this knot, this dark knot, and you can't get through it for the life of you. Your chisel just won't cut through it, or you blunt your chisel or ding it just trying to get through this freaking knot. And the wood's also inconsistent. Some parts will be sort of crumbly and really fibrous, and then other parts will be really nice and smooth, and it's just it's not good, because you can't really tell exactly what's going to happen. So you can imagine let's say you're doing something this size even, and it's going really well on this side of the face, and then suddenly you come across some bad sort of like a crumbly wood or fibrous wood that chips and it breaks off. You get breakaway, and part of the nose breaks off, or a key feature is ruined, and you think, wow, I'm really upset now. Should have bought that lime wood. So yeah, a lot of practical difficulties with the carving, and obviously there would be with the stone carving too. I haven't done that, but that's even more difficult to source. To source stuff, but you're not going to approach that the same way as wood carving. I mean, you can afford to be improvise a bit more, and be a little more, I don't think you have to be quite as precious with the wood, quite as precious as, definitely if you bought some marble, or even some decent stone, whatever they use, limestone or something. So yeah, end up at the moment I'm basically just doing wax and clay stuff. When I'm doing it, so we've given him an ear on that side. Probably can't see what I'm actually doing. Doesn't matter. Or maybe it does. Because I'm not working with reference here, I'm sort of, is a little bit, I'm a bit careful. Which sounds a bit silly, because I guess I'm being a bit reckless. I'm not using any reference, but sometimes you can't be bothered wading through your massive JPEG collection to find the fitting model. Yeah, so what was I saying? Yeah, I mean that's partly why the carving became very frustrating, because I was using just scrap wood and wood I had around and that, and you have some success and then you get things will just break away, and also when you're learning about the grain, and you get too crazy with your gouging and you rip things off, and it can be pretty frustrating, and it's just something that it's harder also, yeah, to move it around everywhere. You could have to be, I mean, if I was doing, I have done carving here before, but if I'm doing it here, I've got to make sure I collect all the wood, and yeah. So plasticine is one of the problems with plasticine is that, and maybe it's not all of them, but the one I have here, I believe it's got sulfur in it, and that means I'm poisoned, and I've only got a few years to live now. No, it means that if you touch it with your hands, and then you touch your eyes, then I discovered, and I still believe this is the case, I started getting irritated eyes, and I think it was because I was touching at my eyes, rubbing my eye or something, and yeah, I started getting like red eyes, like it was burning my eyes. So you gotta be careful, and you just do that without thinking. You just touch your eye, and so that's a little bit. That's a little tip. That's a little amateur tip for you. And yeah, it's it doesn't dry, so there's a positive and benefit to it. The positive is that you keep working the on it and whatever, and you reuse it all the time. Bad thing is that it never sets, and so it's always vulnerable. I knock these over all the time and dent them. They never harden, like water clay, so it never holds its weight. You can never build it, have it hold its weight to a degree like water clay does. Water clay's not great at that either, but it does that after a while. If you use them as yeah, it holds its weight unless it's very thin. Well, I don't know. It's still, you gotta be careful how thick the base is, but this stuff just is very flimsy. And it collects like lint and stuff. Like you can probably can't see it, but this guy's got like lint all in his hair, and it gets like, I mean, I've got white, so you can see all that more, but it just collects dust and lint, and I think more than wax, because wax you just wash it off. So, but it's obviously pretty good, pretty useful, or very useful. And this ear is like weight. This ear needs like to be like. This ear. I'm just gonna amputate it. So everything's got pros and cons. I mean, water clay has a lot of problems. Drive you insane, that stuff. I mean, before you see, these days, I found a way of keeping it. I mean, I've kept stuff moist for months, just by putting them under Tupperware containers with a little cup of water in there, and it just keeps it humid in there, and it actually, yeah, I've done that just for months. So you can do it quite long, but if it's small enough, and but it's just one of the frustrating things about water clay is controlling the consistency, because sometimes it's too wet to work in properly, and you got to wait, but you want to do the thing now, and other times then you're in a race against time, and it's just a very irritating substance, but it's got a lot of benefits to it. But yeah, it has a lot of problems, water clay. But you can dig it out of the ground, so maybe I should stop complaining. But that's where wood's so great. I mean, wood, you can make a figure and it will stand on its own legs. Sounds silly, but you can make an animal and it stands on its own legs. With clay, it won't. So, it sounds silly, but it won't. It won't stand on its own legs. You'll have to put it on an armature, or you'll have to do a very tricky way of letting the base dry, then carving it back so that the bottom part's hard enough so it will stand on the legs. It still might crack and break when you fire it, if you do fire it. So if you don't fire, like I said, everything's got these pros and cons. I mean, with the oil clay, I don't have to fire it. I can leave it like this, and yes, it's soft, and I can damage it, but it's if I drop water on it, it's not going to dissolve, and it won't just snap. That's what water clay does. You don't have to fire it, but then if you get any moisture water, it will ruin it. It will just crack and break potentially if you drop it, or it knocks or something. It will just shatter. Now you can do other things, like you can put straw in there and things like that to make it stronger, which I've tried. But yeah, it won't. You can put this stuff on an armature and it won't crack, whereas water clay will crack on so many different armatures, but not all armatures. I mean, sometimes you can get away with it. I did some experiments of wire sizes and so on, but it's like I went and did that, then I went and made some on armatures which I thought were going to work, and they crack. So it's highly frustrating, that stuff. Whereas with wood, hey, it stands on its own legs, but you got to spend a day getting the wood away. So yeah, it's just everything's got its. That's why in a way wax is sort of the best, but you gotta kind of is the best, but they don't make wax trees. That'd be good. And you still have to cast it to make it permanent. And the other thing about clay, the other delightful thing, I think my eyes are too close together here again. I always do that. This is actually, let's finish my sentence there. I'm interrupting myself. So one thing about waterclay as well is that the dust is poisonous. Apparently, the silica can give you problems, lung problems. So that's nice to know. So you shouldn't leave the dust around. And it's like, man, okay, great. So you gotta be careful of that. It doesn't irritate your eyes like this, like the sulfur. Yeah. Wood can also give you problems, respiratory problems if you're not careful. So you shouldn't use sandpaper or stuff like that too much. So yeah. But nothing's as bad probably as well, maybe. But etching and the exploding resin boxes. That was so etching with the potentially carcinogenic resin that can also spontaneously combust in your resin box. Well, not spontaneously. If there's any metal, and you get a spark or something, and it sets on fire. So, look, art's dangerous. It's very dangerous. Not really. No, not most of the time. But anyway. So this is a bit of a failed armature. We've got a roll there and cardboard, so it doesn't keep falling over and smashing its face. And that's just paper, and I was trying to make a paper one, or scrunch paper, and it's sort of you probably can't see it, but it's kind of wonky because it's hard to get paper to do what you want. And this was an experiment, and the face has gone too. If you make this part of if you're making an armature that like a symmetrical armature with a bulb on top, if you make it too big, you'll push the face too far forward. This part on the skull, if this part's too big, too wide, and you push the face too far forward, and you get problems. Everything goes. So this is probably a little. Well, I might get away with it. You get problems with the neck, and you get problems with the face. So this one, I think it's too far forward. I think it's too long. So now this is coming up the back. It's and look see it's unstable, the paper, so it's cracking it. So this is a failed armature. But you can get away with it a little bit. I just thought, well, if I have so much paper around, I could use paper. That'd be great. But sometimes things don't work out. It kind of works. It sort of works. Yeah, it sort of works. If you get enough plasticene thickness, you can stop that. If I just give him hair on the back, it would cover. See, I've got problems here as well. The paper won't go away, and it's springy. It's not. I can't. It's like if you have an armature like I don't have it here. I don't think. I have another one where I've got a wax head, and I've got a wooden armature, so like this, and I can remove this stuff and then carve back the armature because it's wood. If it's shooting through wrong, right? If it's sort of like I'm out of whack there, but with paper it's not quite as easy. So this face is about. This is the issue with sculpture, right? As soon as you start doing even half size, you use surprising amount of material, and I haven't even done the hair. If I was putting hair on, I'd use a huge amount, really, for what, considering like how much I've got. And that's why you want armatures that ideally fill up quite a bit with just junk, because I guess they're not armatures at that point, technically, or maybe they are. But but it's just to save up material. But let's see, there's so we're just doing stylized, simplified ears. I'm not interested in all the little spirals and everything. I'm interested in the main form in basically the right place so that I can light it, and then potentially I can light it and use it for study. So that's why my ears look like that. I could add a bit more but at this size, but I'm not that interested, to be honest. I pretty much like pretty stylized forms anyway. Just goes, this is like a spectrum. It depends on what I'm looking at the time as well. Now I've been looking at Stossi, I mean, who's you know, he is stylized, but it's more detailed and naturalistic than you think sometimes. You look at it and go, oh, actually, you've done quite a lot of anatomical detail there, even though you've applied some of your own aesthetics to it, but yeah. So yeah, I'm not interested in, not going to be doing nostrils. We're not doing. Really not interested. Interested in the main, just in the main form, so I can get the main lighting patterns. And also, I mean, like I said, I always find simplification of forms interesting. Not to say I've never done nostrils or never do nostrils, but you know, I'm not as interested in those things, and this is actually still, for me, it's, I mean, I could geometricize this more and I would have to do some more geometricized ones anyway, but this guy's lucky he's got some eyes, because I've been going through a stage of not even wanting to do eyes, really, just doing sockets, but like simplified sockets. Eyes, you know, just like the worst things to do. It's really the socket. You have to get the vectors of the socket coming back a lot. I'm not going to try and act like this is a tutorial. I'm going to give the secrets, but just while we're talking about it, some of the things I've picked up in my struggles. That's why it's good to get a skull, so you can actually see the socket going, how it's receding, and the eye sort of is easier to place as basically a sort of a convex mound. And if it was polychrome, you wouldn't even have to do. They do a bit of a lid. A lot of those people are doing a bit of a lid, but yeah, you can get away with a little less if it's polychrome, potentially. Or you can do what you want. When you're not being paid by a patron anyway. And patrons don't really exist like they used to, do they? These days they are more likely to pay some, the kind of people we have in power now are more likely to pay some kind of like MTV star to, or pay $1 million to perform at their birthday party or something, right? So patronage kind of wouldn't even work very well now. Even if it made a comeback, because the kind of people that became the money class in the so-called West. Just how disappointing. It's crazy, isn't it? Like, there are even bankers in the old days that had some appreciation for higher things. That's when you know you're in trouble. Even the bankers used to want to beautify the world with noble culture to a degree. After that, they'd corrupted everything probably with their money lending. But what? That's a bit negative, wasn't it? Maybe I haven't seen those ads that the banks do for a while. They do those ads where they're telling you how they really care about you, and they want to help you with your business, or they're so caring, man. Banks, they used to not care, I think, but now they care, and like they show pictures of people running through a field or something, and I don't know, they're like living these beautiful lives because the bank cared and gave them that helping hand. I guess just like the bank helped Michelangelo, same thing. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the bankers are way better now because they make much better adverts. How did we get onto usury? Well, because at a certain point, the bankers and the merchant class acquired all the money, apparently. And so patronage was dependent on them for a while, and then it clearly fell apart. It was pretty predictable, wasn't it? Well, it is if you believe in traits. Traits, right? That people have, and when you have certain people with certain traits in charge, you're going to get a certain kind of culture and certain kind of laws. And they used to call them the nobility for a reason. It wasn't because they were all perfect, and there were many degenerates, no doubt, but they were expected to be a certain way, and they had certain traits that would have been a little more noble. And so when they're determining how your society runs and what is promoted, then you get particular characteristics. When you get Larry Flint being an aristocrat in your society because of your economic system and your liberal constitution, then those are the people that are now determining the kind of culture you have and what is promoted. And people say, come on, he's just a businessman. Really? He was at Clinton's inauguration. He was a guest of honor. He was a guest of honor because I remember that comedian Norm Macdonald roasting Clinton. Whatever, not the inauguration, the roast. He was part of he was like a you know, he was part of the court, the modern court, this guy. So those are the people that our great leaders have as part of their courts. So is it any surprise that we're living in filth? Well, it shouldn't be, really. But, hey, it's the best it's ever been, society, because we have more gadgets. So don't ever forget that. And I've got plasticene, and they used to have only water clay, and I just mentioned I didn't like it. It's good for some things though. If I had a kiln, I was going to make one, but had some issues there. Again, I found out that living in industrial society has its drawbacks, because you can't just go and chop down wood to use for your kiln every week, and you probably can't fire it. You got to be careful firing it in summer, because I mean you're basically going to be paranoid about your kiln getting flagged, and as a threat to your society. No, it's just a bit more difficult to do. I probably will eventually do it, but man, this arch is so wonky. So, you know, I've done a little bit on these. I need to look. You gotta look back. You gotta be careful you're not looking too close. That's why I do my eyes too close together, I think, because you really got to get back and not. Yep, needs a lot more. So we'll just these mouths are garbage as well. They're all wrong. It's because I keep changing everything. Alright, I think I'll leave it there. Ended up with a weird split nose. Did I actually knock that? So now I'll make sure I don't touch my eyes before I've cleaned my hands. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna finish.